I would hypothesize that 95% of the day, all of us are just on autopilot. You know, we get up in the morning, we start doing our things and blah, 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 and then all of a sudden it's 9:30 and we're in the office and, you know, the phone rings and we're just kind of going through these steps without a lot of mindfulness. And that's very efficient. The problem with it is when we are on autopilot, we're not being careful. When we're in a similar situation, maybe the same situation, we're driving down the same road, it's very, very efficient for us to not pay a lot of attention to that. We're able to think about something else and do something else and respond very quickly. The issue is that when we're in times of change, when we're in a new role, we're in a new situation, when things are complex, we've got to be able to get off of this autopilot. What's happening is we're following these patterns, and they're formed at a neurological level. Our brains like to form patterns. We start associating certain neural networks, and this idea and this idea and this response become connected. And we actually begin to dedicate more and more neurons to that pattern. This step of recognizing your patterns is about seeing what are your own typical reactions and being able to focus in, when this stimulus, what is my typical response? And that stimulus response, it could be when I see this or when I think this. When I think somebody is not being honest with me, typical response. When I feel, typical response. So for me, for example, when I feel guilty, my typical response is to attack. And what happens is that allows me to push the guilt away a little bit. One of my patterns is when I feel overwhelmed, I withdraw. And that gives me some benefits. It lets me kind of recover my energy and not cope with this thing that's overwhelming. On the other hand, it causes me to be conflict avoidant, and it causes me to not address the issue that's making me overwhelmed. So every pattern has costs and benefits. Essentially, though, the first step here is seeing that we have these typical ways of responding and noticing in ourselves when stimulus, typical response, and beginning to develop this inventory of our own typical responses. And that allows us to notice when we're on autopilot and when we're being intentional.